the maid hears the flute. July is on fire, and the heat wave rising at noon makes people breathless. Wendy avoided the servants who were on duty one after another on the roadside and slipped into an abandoned courtyard to prepare for a lunch break. She didn't know why, but the girls who shared the same room with her were chatting endlessly even though they were off duty all day long, which made her dizzy. Since she accidentally discovered this small courtyard, it has become a holy place for Wendy to hide and relax, and it is still used today. After walking around the small courtyard 2 or 3 times to make sure there was no one around, Wendy touched his head, then pulled out a worn-out deck chair that was about to fall apart in a remote corner of the courtyard, and dragged it to the shadow of the old locust tree in the courtyard. In fact, there were only a few steps in total, but she felt that her legs were weak for a while, and she was so dizzy that she couldn't even figure out where she was, so she fell headlong into a lush patch of weeds next to the lounge chair. She was stunned for a moment, a little stunned. After calming down for a while, he swallowed his saliva, then stood up with difficulty on the recliner, and then got in without any strength. Blessings from all the Buddhas. I hope that Audie will not meet the eldest son today, please. She silently clasped her hands together and made signs on her heart. The sun shone dappledly on her face, and the cicadas chirped loudly. Wendy squinted her eyes and began to feel sleepy. Her cold body gradually warmed up. Only then did she slowly feel that she was alive again. Wendy's experience so far can only be described as miserable. She was not from here originally. The Naniwang who was beside the eldest son picked it up from the west bank of the river outside the city when she returned to her hometown to visit relatives. Crescent Country has many water systems extending in all directions, so it is unknown where this child drifted from. Mrs. Wang is not a kind person, and it stands to reason that she would not save people with good intentions. But this time she hesitated. From a distance, the child looked only 8 or 9 years old. His skin was white with blisters, his eyelashes were curved and attached to his eyelids, and his jet black hair spread out covering most of his face. Only his pointed chin was exposed. He didn't know whether he was alive or dead, and he looked weak and pitiful. Although the clothes were ragged and faded due to blisters, Mom had served her master in a wealthy family for a long time, and she could tell at a glance that the clothes were made of extraordinary materials that ordinary people could not afford. She hesitated for a moment, then accidentally rescued Wendy. A few days later, after waking up from the coma, Wendy saw her savior. The woman's eyes were shining with light, her temples were deeply sunken, and her cheeks and cheekbones were extremely high. His lips were thin and sharp, pursed in an indifferent manner. He sat on the embroidery stool beside the bed and trimmed his nails. He stared at her with a bewildered expression, which frightened her greatly. She is still deeply impressed by this woman to this day. Mrs. Wang was not polite. When she saw that she was awake, she cleared her throat and asked straight to the point. "What's your name? Where is your home? I ask you, and you have to answer truthfully." Her voice was filled with cold ice, and the body of Wendy, who had just woken up, shrank back slightly. She stared at the child's empty eyes, feeling inexplicably unhappy, and frowned fiercely. "Flute." The hoarse and gentle voice softly uttered one word. "What are you playing?" She stood up. "I can't remember." Wendy had a splitting headache, covering his head and looking pale. Wang's patience ran out. She turned around and walked nonstop towards the door. She paused at the door, turned around and glanced at her condescendingly, coldly. "Dee, there was a word when on the jade pendant hanging around your neck when I picked you up. I'm afraid you are called Wendy. I saved your life, so you can't take this jade pendant away again." She gritted her teeth with hatred and was extremely disappointed. She was murmuring in her mind, "Amnesia? What a bad luck. I don't remember any wealthy family named one in the city, and I don't know anyone outside the city. I made a mistake this time and actually rescued an oil bottle. This jade pen seems to be worth a lot of money, but I don't know how much it can be pawned." After that, Wendy lay in bed for 3 or 4 months before she could recover. Although she was able to get out of bed and walk around, she still suffered from some problems. During this period, Mom ignored Wendy and never visited her. He only sent people to send her some leftovers every day. As soon as she got better, Mrs. Wang used all kinds of tricks to sell Wendy into her family's Lee mansion. She signed a death deed and didn't give her a penny of the money she received without mentioning anything. The Lee mansion is a second-rate businessman's house in the city, And the head of the house is Mrs. Liu. Merchants value profits, and the house has never raised idle people. Since when Dee came into the house, the stewards saw that she was struggling to even walk, but they also gave her odd jobs one after another. After a long time, I saw that when Dee was really pitiful and honest, so he arranged for her to learn the rules with a group of maids and servants of about the same size who had just been admitted to Lee's residence. Her body bones were so weak that she could not lift her hands or carry her shoulders. Every time she did some work, her face turned pale, as if half of her life was tied up in it. At the end of the year, all the assessments were at the bottom, so when the assignments were assigned, they were naturally assigned to the worst places. The place of duty is the back garden of Lee's house, and his daily job is to take care of the flower garden. The work of taking care of flowers and plants is actually simple, easy, and leisurely, but still no one wants to do it. Most of the people who come here are the old, weak, sick, and disabled in the house. It is a place recognized by everyone as the most unpromising place. But Wendy didn't think so. She thought it was very comfortable to spend her youth here. The job of weeding was just about enough. The interpersonal relationship was simple, and she didn't have to kneel around all the big shots in the house all day long. She instinctively hated being groveled. What made her even more satisfied was that there was actually a bookstore located in a remote place not far from the back door of the back garden. The attic occupies a large area, with 3 or 4 floors at first glance, and is magnificent, but in fact its actual function is just to support the place. Since ancient times, among workers, peasants, scholars, and merchants, the status of merchants is the most humble and the most constrained. There are not many ways for merchant families to break down class barriers. Generally, the most direct way for wealthy families is to donate an official position. Using money to create a small official in the family, although it is not a big deal, it still has a lot of face. The situation like Lee's mansion is very embarrassing. The business is small and large, but the number of people is sparse. She wanted to donate an official position, but couldn't find a man of suitable age and close relationship. Mrs. Lee's temperament was strong and vengeful, and she naturally didn't want to take advantage of the playboys of her late husband's family, so she gave up her thoughts on donating an official position early. After much deliberation, he gritted his teeth and spent a lot of money to build a library and then publicized it, which made him gain some limelight. The library that can be repaired is as useless as a mascot in the Lee mansion. The eldest son spends all day lounging around with his friends and friends. He never returns home, let alone goes to the library to study. Naturally, this area became extremely deserted. No one passed by the door for 10 days and a half. There was only a lame old man who had been the accountant of the mansion many years ago and had some knowledge to guard the door. Even so, it is true that not everyone can come and go in the library at will. When Dee racked his brains in order to enter the library, and he did not neglect the lame old man who was guarding the book. After many accidental encounters between Wendy and the bookkeeper, the help he received, the concern of delivering medicine and wine, and a series of events that made people call it fate, the old man who has been with the book for many years has become very fond of this cute junior Wendy. With this close relationship, Wendy could come and go freely in this bookstore. She didn't know why she wanted to read. A few months after she woke up, she just felt that reading could make her feel less bored every day. It was also the first time since she woke up that she thought she had to do something, like some guidance. What surprised the old man who kept the book was that Wendy was very savvy at a young age. He picked up the book and flipped through it. He could read 10 lines at a glance and understood it with just a little explanation. The little girl was holding a book in her hand. Her eyes were bright, her mouth was slightly hooked, and she looked thoughtful, which made the old bookkeeper feel that he was no longer lonely. The two of them kept each other company and depended on each other in the house. Wendy often thinks that God has been kind to her. Although she has lost her memory, she is not stupid. She still has books, flowers, and plants to accompany her. She firmly believes that one day she'll be able to recover her memory, find herself, and make everything less bad. Time flies, for years pass by, serving flowers and plants, reading books, and being in a daze. No one cares what this girl with a very low sense of existence is thinking. Her life was running like a stagnant water. But the peaceful days never last long. Wendy's tranquility was broken by the eldest son of the Lee family, who suddenly came to the garden to enjoy the flowers. Mr. Lee looked at Wendy from a distance. At this time, she was wearing a whitewashed uniform, sweating profusely, carrying a small hoe to loosen the soil and weed the flowers. The setting sun shone on her hair, and the little girl's eyebrows were relaxed and soft, which was very beautiful. After watching for a while, Mr. Lee walked away through the winding corridor with mottled tree shadows, with his mouth raised and his hands folded, as if he was just admiring the flowers, and said nothing to the flute. "Is this the beauty you often mention? She is quite pretty," Mr. Lee said to Wang behind him, with his chin swaying. "Young master, what do you think? Do you need me to help you do some activities? It's a great blessing for this girl to be interested in you," Wang asked cautiously, while looking at the young master's face. Mr. Lee was in a good mood and clapped his hands and laughed happily, with a proud and unrestrained laugh. "Nanny, wet nurse, you really understand me, but there's no need for that now. My mother has been very strict recently, so I'll let it go in advance. Of course, you have contributed a lot to it. I heard that your man is working very hard every day, and there happens to be a shop in the city that is short of a steward recently. Let him report." Wang stretched out her hand to wipe the sweat on her head with her sleeves, smiled with folds on her face, and her heart slowly dropped to its resting place. Soon, Wang's life gradually became more prosperous because of Wendy, but Wendy unknowingly became more and more difficult because of her. After tidying up the chairs, Wendy stretched, straightened his clothes, and prepared to go to the garden to start his afternoon errands. I walked to the garden with a small shovel. As soon as Wendy saw the young man in a blue shirt sitting on a stone bench with his back to her from a distance, I felt a headache and turned around to leave. "Stop!" A sharp shout came from behind. Hearing the flute had no choice but to stop, feeling chilled in his heart. "You're not polite when you see me? Who taught me the rules? Do you want to go to the groom's room to clean the toilet for another 3 months? Or did you eat enough yesterday?" The gloomy-faced young man raised his chin and leered at her from a distance. "Young master, it's nothing. I am of low status, and I am afraid that I will ruin your enjoyment of flower viewing." Wendy suppressed the disgust in his heart and stepped forward to salute him. "This young man is the only son of the lady in the house, named Li Yan. He was pampered and pampered since he was a child, and his temper was pampered to the extreme. What you want must be obtained, and what you hate must be destroyed. He beat and scolded his servants frequently, and all the servants in the house avoided him. Ever since I met Wendy by chance in the garden before, I have been attracted to her. In the days that followed, he showed his kindness to her frequently, but he didn't expect that this Wendy was soft-hearted and looked sick, but he had a stronger backbone than anyone else." Li Yan was so angry that she often sent people to make things difficult for Wen Flute. As a result, she was ostracized and isolated by the servants in the house and suffered a lot. From the bottom of my heart, I never feel inferior when I listen to the flute. She also doesn't understand why there are always people who like to show off their power and trample on the dignity of others. Could it be that watching others sink into the dust can bring them happiness? People like Li Yan are blessed by God. They are already superior to others from birth, but they are still greedy and want more. If you can't afford to offend yourself, why can't you afford to hide? She was extremely annoyed with Li Yan and could be described as extremely disgusted. "Master, what are your orders?" Wendy knelt on the ground and was silent for a long time before he managed to squeeze out a sentence through his teeth. "Little girl, my mother-in-law said she wanted to see her for me." Li Yan crossed his legs and knocked on the stone table with the fan bone, secretly observing the wood's reaction. "Oh, the eldest son, Jilan Yushu, will definitely find a beautiful woman with red sleeves to add fragrance." She had no expression on her face, but she was a little excited in her heart. This dandy young man who had nothing to do was finally have no time to stare at her every day. "I'm going to tell my mother that I want you to stay by my side from now on. What do you think?" Seeing that she was unmoved, Li Yan was slightly disappointed and even more annoyed that she didn't know what to do. "My servant is stupid and young. The young master can have many better candidates." Wendy gritted his teeth secretly and expressed his rejection. Li Yan's forehead twitched slightly. He stepped forward, pinched her chin, and raised it sharply. Wendy turned his head to the side, pursed his lips tightly, and the resistance was clearly visible in his eyes. With a pop sound, Li Yan became angry and slapped Wendy's face away. "Do you think I'm not qualified and have wronged you?" Yesterday, Li Yan made trouble for him, and he was punished until now without even drinking water. His body was extremely weak. Wen Di felt that the world was spinning for a moment, and he fell to the ground before he could stand. His face was swollen after being beaten for a while. Li Yan looked at the embarrassed Wen Di, who was kneeling on the ground, and sneered, "It's not up to you whether you can do it or not. Don't be shameless. I want you to be my concubine when I'm in a good mood. What can I do if I throw you away when I'm not in a good mood? Now that you've made me unhappy, I'll continue to punish you by depriving you of food. I'll kneel down until tomorrow night. Don't forget your identity. You're just a cheap maidservant." That's what the eldest son said. Wen Di said calmly, "If you don't eat and drink as a penalty, sooner or later you will be crying and begging me." Li Yan asked for trouble. He didn't come here to humiliate her, but he was so easily offended by her that he snorted and walked away. As soon as Li Yan left, Wen Di's straight spine collapsed. She touched her face, and the pain made her more awake. What can we do? She was very frustrated, but she was not too afraid. She had heard about Mrs. Li, but she lowered her head and reached out to cover her stomach. "I haven't eaten for a day, and I'm already dizzy. Now I feel better. I have to be hungry for another day. It's been a bad year," she sighed. Go. Moonlight Opera Prince. As expected by Wen Di, Mrs. Li did not agree. For her, listening to the flute was not a candidate. Mrs. Li looked at her son, who was kneeling on the ground with red and swollen cheeks, and her right hand trembled slightly. "Are you stupid? Don't you know how to hide when I hit you?" "Mom, you've already slapped me. No matter how angry you are, it's time to go away." "No, then slap me a few more times. I just ask you to make Wenyata my concubine," the young man said with a stubborn look. "You bastard." Mrs. Li stood up suddenly and slapped the table hard. Li Yan was so frightened that his heart skipped a beat. He continued to confront Mrs. Li and stuttered, Why can't she do it? I just think she's good." "Okay, my wings have become stronger. Now, for the sake of an insignificant girl, she has begun to disobey me." Mrs. Li laughed angrily. "Mom, you said she is insignificant. Why can't you just follow my wishes?" Li Yan knelt on the ground and rubbed his knees forward, pulling the corner of Mrs. Li's clothes and tugging twice. When Mrs. Li saw how useless he looked, her heart became even more angry. I really don't know who this Li Yan followed. He was so timid all day long that he only wanted to eat, drink, have fun, fight with chickens and dogs, and develop this extreme temperament. The man has gold at his knees. "Stand up," Mrs. Li shouted angrily. Li Yan stood up and lowered his head without saying a word. "Yenner, how old are you? And how old is Wenyatu? Are you waiting for her? Are you waiting?" The noble lady looked at her son, her eyes slightly condensed. "Others at your age have already married and established a career. But what about you? I don't want to push you too hard, but you also have to be measured. I don't say how much help you can bring to the Li family by marrying wives and concubines, but at least you have to know the basics. Mrs. Li hates that iron cannot be made into steel." Error 500, server error. 1500, that's an error. There was an error. Please try again later. That's all we know. Mrs. Li patiently reasoned with her son. "Do you think this is normal? Everyone has a past, but we know nothing about her past. There must be forces behind her to help her cover it up. But why should she cover it up? Whether it is a blessing or a curse, we certainly can't afford to offend her." Error 500, server error. 1500, that's an error. There was an error. Please try again later. That's all we know. There was silence in the flower hall for a moment. Mrs. Li pondered for a moment and said, "Anyway, Mother doesn't want you to have anything to do with her. You can go back. Don't mention this matter again. I let her stay in the house before because she was lonely and weak, and your incompetent nanny just sold her into the house. I don't want to cause any trouble. Be careful. If you keep messing around, I'll tell her to clean up and get out of here right away. I think your nanny is too old to stay with you anymore. I'll let her go back to her hometown to live in her old age. What a mess she's made of you." Seeing Li Yan's dejected figure leaving, Mrs. Li felt even more unhappy. Apart from the inevitable reasons, of course, she also has her own considerations. If it were true to his son's wishes, and based on his love for that girl, If he had been wiped out by the gentle countryside and had no fighting spirit, would he still be willing to go out for business frequently? Her body was getting worse day by day. Based on the current Li Yan, if she didn't experience and practice, how could she trust her to hand over the Li mansion to him in 100 years? Li Yan closed the door tightly and sat motionless until dusk fell. Darkness enveloped his gloomy eyes from all sides. Just listen to your mother and give up? No, no, no. How could he be willing to do so? Even though Wendy didn't treat him well, he couldn't convince himself to let her go. The more he drank, the more bitter he became, and Li Yan could no longer bear the discomfort. He came to the garden drunk, with only one idea in his mind. He wanted to see the stench. The palace lanterns hanging under the cloister in the distance glowed with the warm yellow glow of candlelight, and the wind chimes at the corners of the pavilion were slightly stirred by the breeze, making a few crisp sounds. The fragrance of unknown flowers came and was blown away by the wind, leaving only a few lingering strands lingering on his nose. Li Yan's body was full of energy, and his mind was in a daze. I feel very comfortable. He turned around and was stunned, just for a glance. Then he ran into a pair of clear eyes. His mind was dizzy, and he remembered a piece of transparent amber he got by chance when he was a child. An unknown stream that stays on the shore for a long time when traveling in the mountains. Thought of it. The moon in the sky cannot be obtained, and the snow in the palm cannot be retained. This is how he felt when he saw Wendy. Wendy was startled by the sudden figure and took 2 steps back, staring at him timidly, like a vigilant deer in the forest, clean and beautiful. She bit her lip nervously, and seeing how he was frozen in place, she tentatively asked, "Young master, are you okay?" I cursed in my heart. What a bad luck. If I had known that I would not come back from the garden after reading the book, I would have met a ghost at night. Seeing that he didn't answer, he continued, "Master, it's getting late. It's hard to walk at night, so you should leave quickly." "Who are you?" Li Yan asked confusedly, as he had a splitting headache. "Ah!" Wendy didn't expect that he was so drunk that no one could recognize him. She smiled slyly, her eyebrows clear. "Of course, I am a flower demon who has been practicing for many years. I specialize in sucking the essence of passing men to harvest yang and replenishing." She made a face. "Are you scared? But you. I don't like it. I will spare your life. Run away, and when I regret it, I will peel your skin and cramps as flower fertilizer." She sniffed, looking very proud and arrogant. "What a coincidence. You are also a monster." Li Yan took 2 steps towards her. Seeing how cute she looked, he couldn't hold it in any longer. He hugged her tightly from behind and deliberately spoke in a sinister voice while holding his throat. He wasn't exactly drunk. Li Yan's face, standing in the shadows, could not be seen clearly, and his face turned blue due to drinking looked extremely scary. Wendy didn't understand why he was so crazy. He picked up a stone from the ground and threw it at his head, struggled out of his arms, and ran towards his residence, without looking back. Li Yan subconsciously wanted to chase after him, but he staggered after being hit. The energy from being drunk made his center of gravity even more unstable. After swaying for a few steps, he stumbled to the ground and could not stand up for a long time. After struggling for a while, he tilted his head and fell asleep. The only thing in his mind that was numbed by alcohol was the little girl who was running away quickly and getting further and further away from him. She was running under the moonlight. Her clothes were rustling in the wind, and her long black hair was flying back and forth around her unbroken waist. Like a fairy, riding the wind back home. It was noon on the 2nd day after Li Yan woke up. He was in his room. The guards who patrolled the palace found him on the garden path last night. He covered his head and smiled, this daring girl. How could he let go? He didn't understand, nor was he afraid of the powerful force that his mother said was unheard of. He only knows that he likes Wendy, and he wants Wendy to belong to him forever. He can do whatever it takes, but he will never give up. Li Yan stepped out of the room and ran into a panicked boy. The young man raised his head and glanced at the eldest young master's livid face. He was so frightened that he trembled and said, "Young master, my wife has told you to pack up and go to the front hall now. Mr. Lin and his second lady are here." Li Yan's face instantly turned gloomy and unsightly. Yes, this is the right candidate in Mother's eyes. He nodded. Tell Mother, and I'll be there right away. Li Yan walked a few steps, then turned back and told the guard at the door. Go and call young Master Han. Come over anyway. The guard was shocked and didn't understand why the young master wanted to see Mr. Han. The lady had told the young master not to get close to him. Didn't the young master also feel ashamed of people like Mr. Han before? But he just paused and followed the order. After all, Li Yan is his master, and no matter what his master wants to do, he will not comment on it. Rejuvenation. Brother Han, is this really possible? Li Yan weighed the small paper bag in his hand and felt uneasy. The short, fat man across the table rubbed his hands and said with an incomprehensible smile, If you say anything else, I, Han Lao Heir, may not be very good at this, but no one knows this better than me. The man who spoke was the second son of the Han family in Weiqing and one of Li Yan's former friends. The Han family has been operating in Weiqing for many years, and he has a place even among the first-class businessmen in the city. He is far from comparable to a small family with an unstable foundation like the Li family. However, Mrs. Li has always strictly prohibited Li Yan from interacting with Han heir and is somewhat dismissive. In Mrs. Li's opinion, although the Han family has great wealth and connections, their business is disgraceful, and she is afraid that their son will be led astray by Han heir. The Han family's business is not an ordinary trade deal, but an unfair skin and flesh business. Its most important industry is the fireworks street in Donglin Lane of Weiqing. Believe me, this medicine is more than enough. A little bit is enough to make the chaste maiden obediently obey. Many young masters who come to our building have agreed to use it, he said proudly, shaking the small paper bag in his hand at Li Yan twice. The great thing about this medicine is that it is not a direct stunner, nor is an aphrodisiac without any technical content. Han Ermiai recommended it to his good brother with flying eyebrows. First of all, it takes off the woman's energy. Who doesn't love a soft little beauty? She won't be able to run away by then. Even after a few scratches, it is also a kind of fun. You just need to wait a moment for the effect of the medicine to take full effect. At this time, the little beauty who has been infected is confused and hallucinating, thinking that everyone is her lover. When the time comes, Brother Li, you will not be willing to do whatever you want. After saying this, the fat on his face trembled and he laughed. This potent medicine calls for rejuvenation. Li Yan nodded and raised his hand to signal the guard standing not far away to come forward. After whispering for a while, the guard left in a hurry. After a while, he came back with a tray covered by silk cloth in his hand. He smiled and pushed the tray to Han heir. Brother Han, if it works now, I will be extremely grateful. A small meaning is not a sign of respect. Don't be polite. You must accept it with a smile. Han Lao used a fan to open a corner of the silk cloth. His eyes narrowed, and a smile instantly filled his face. He stood up and patted Li Yan on the shoulder and said, Brother, why do you have to say such kind words? After that, the two of them exchanged glasses for a while. Li Yan stood at the door of Li Mansion and watched Han heir leave. He stretched out his hand and gently touched the paper bag stuffed in his waist, and murmured to himself, I pity you for being lonely and young. I didn't want to do it so early, but the remaining unfinished words dissipated into the dirty corners of the night. Wendi got up early. Li Yan seemed to have forgotten her after that incident, and Wendi, who regained his peace, returned to his peaceful and stable life. Reading and serving flowers every day are endlessly comfortable. But today was very different from the past. Aunt Zhang, who was in charge of the backyard, suddenly found a place where low-class servants lived that few people visited and notified Wendi to go out with her to do some shopping. Although Wendi didn't understand why her grandmother, whom she had never met, chose her, she was ecstatic to be allowed to leave the house once. The last time she left the house was last year when Wendi helped the steward run errands and deliver letters. She didn't know what it was like outside now. Adi, I heard that you can leave the house. Can I ask you to bring me something? Adi, do you know that the Lord of the City is back in the city today? You are so lucky. You can go out to watch the ceremony. You must be very grand. Chun Xing, who was in charge of sweeping the front yard with him, chirped while talking to Wendi. She frowned and looked at Wendi. I don't know what Grandma thinks. I'm obviously smarter and cleverer, but I chose you. Wen Di smiled and said to Chen Xing, maybe I don't care about the whole house, so you let me go. The front yard is the face of our whole house. There are so many noble people coming and going every day, but Sister Chen Xing can't leave it for a while. It all depends on you to take charge of the overall situation. A person with a little knowledge might laugh out loud after hearing this. How can a small sweeper have anything to do with taking charge of the overall situation? But Chuanxing was lifted up by Wen Di, and she held her head high and chest high. Seeing Wen Di, she no longer felt unhappy at all. She became more and more intimate with Wen Di and said with a smile, I don't know what the lord of the city looks like. This after so many years. He wears a shabby mask wherever he goes. I guess he must be extremely ugly and can only cover it up. It doesn't look good at all. I really sympathize with you. You want to be bossed around by that old woman named Zhang. TSK, TSK, TSK. Chen Xing said she was sympathetic, but her expression was completely complacent, as if she had picked up a big deal. Wen Di shook his head and smiled secretly. This Chen Xing has really never changed. His thoughts are as simple and sinister as ever. He doesn't care about the people around him and only suppresses others endlessly. After Wen Di packed up, she waited in the courtyard for Nanny Zhang. After a while, Nanny Zhang came out of the room. She looked at Wen Di for a long time with her triangular eyes, and then handed all the packages to Wen Di, indicating that Wen Di was ready to go. She clasped her toes and walked in front of her in high spirits, while Wen Feng, who was out of breath due to being weighed down by the package, walked behind in silence. Wen Di felt very uncomfortable when she looked at him, as if he was looking at some goods, staring straight at her with hair all over her body. Weiqing is not just an independent city. In fact, its sphere of influence is vast. 12 cities are surrounded by Weiqing, all of which are its affiliated cities. Just because the city lord's palace is located here, this place gradually developed into the main city of the 12 cities. Weiqing and the 12 surrounding cities are far away from the capital, bordering the neighboring Shangzhou kingdom. It is self-sufficient and peaceful in a corner. However, it is the most bizarre and special existence of the Crescent Kingdom. This is because the management of the city has always been arranged by the city lord, and the court has never intervened. However, logically speaking, such a military town should not be so indulgent.